Welcome everyone. I'm assuming I'm live and you can hear me. This is the next session on the ScrollStack Masterclass. We have today Rishad, who's a senior advisor to the Publicis Group, where he has spent his entire 37 years, on advertising and brand building. Most recently, he served as the chief growth officer and chief strategist for the group. He was named one of the top business leaders for his pioneering innovation by Business Week and dubbed as one of the 5 marketing innovators by Time Magazine. This session will focus on the importance of brand building, especially in the new digital world that we find ourselves in. And do send in your questions as throughout the session. After the initial talk, we will be taking all the questions that occur to you, but you can keep sending them as we speak. And again, welcome everybody wherever you are in the world. And I will let take it away.
Thank you very much. Hopefully everybody can hear me. Good evening for those of you who are in India. More like good night towards those in Japan and Singapore. Good morning to those in the US, and good afternoon to those in Europe. Thank you for spending time with me. I'm going to spend the next 30 minutes on something that I believe is very important for every individual who today is working, if they're working either independently or working inside a large corporation, whether you're working in a profit, nonprofit, or government organization. All these learnings are applicable to all these types of jobs as we move into the future. I'm going to try to distill what I have learned over the last 3.5 to 4 decades about work and how to basically build and scale both yourself and your personal brand. So let me start with a little bit of the landscape to understand or to explain why I believe things are about to dramatically change in the nature of how we work, where we work, and what we do. And as a result, why building a personal brand and scaling it is important. I'm going to start broadly with a very simple term, which is strategy. And for me, strategy is 3 words. It is future competitive advantage. I'm now going to use the word strategy with application to ourselves as individuals, workers, and brands. And that is, the first is we need to think about the future because we're going to spend the rest of our lives and the rest of our careers there. We have to think in this future, what will people want? What I mean by what people want is what will employers want? What will people who the employers sell to want? What will human beings want and need? Because that is eventually who will provide the economic benefits as well as the value exchanges that we need. So we need to understand what their future needs are, not necessarily what their current or past needs are. Second is, whenever you have changing needs and you move into the future, you're very likely to have different competitive sets. In this case, there will be different competitive sets of different types of employers, different types of companies, different types of opportunities. Today, a lot of jobs happen in the world, for instance, in technology. That wasn't true, 30, 40 years ago. So you have different potential buyers of your services. As well as, which is very important, is you have different competitors, which is competitors that you didn't think were competing for your job suddenly appear from nowhere. At some particular stage, because of globalization, a lot of people who were working in factories, blue-collar workers in the United States and in Europe, found that their jobs were now at risk because of either workers in China, Vietnam, Mexico. And so all of a sudden, the competitive set also tends to change in the future. So that's the other thing on competitive, which is who are your potential buyers, but also who are your potential competitors as we move into the future. And then against these new needs and new competitors, what advantage are you going to basically provide? And when you think about it that way, it's much easier to think about and plan your career. So think about that. Now, I believe that in the future, there are going to be 4 unstoppable trends, and you need to align, and we all need to align our careers with this particular or these particular trends. The first one, not surprising, is globalization. And globalization is pretty much unstoppable. As I speak to you, I'm speaking to you all over the globe. Whether it is the internet, the opportunities and challenges of COVID-19, climate change, the rise of China, all of these are global. And globalization is not stoppable. The only thing that is in some decline is a Western focused globalization being replaced by a much more multi flavored and definitely an Asian flavored globalization with the rise of China, India, and in the future, Africa. So make sure you recognize that your opportunities, threats, customers are global. It doesn't matter where you work. If you were working, for instance, in the United States and just watching, let's say, Netflix, 50% of Netflix's top 20 shows have been created outside the United States. So it just gives you an idea of how there's nothing like local and global. When I grew up in the US, or not grew up in the US, when I came to the US to study, one of my big pet peeves was the food was so bland, and I discovered Tabasco sauce. 15, 20 years later, because of globalization, immigration, very spicy foods are available all across the United States, in part because of immigration, in part because of importing of foods. So it doesn't matter if you think you're not in the global world, you are always competing and your opportunities are always global. The second one, which is extremely important, is demographic shifts. Every country has different demographic shifts. India, for instance, is a country that is young. China is a country that is growing old. And those demographic shifts, whether it's rural versus urban, old versus young, multi-ethnic, multiracial, all of those are very, very important to understand where job opportunities are, where demands are, etc. So for instance, in the United States, there is a very good reason where companies have begun to realize that on their senior management, on their boards, they're underrepresented with women, they're underrepresented with people of color, and they're now making good on that, which is a good thing. But obviously that has implications both for opportunities and potential challenges for different types of people. And the third one, not surprisingly, is technology. And it is really technology that is changing the way the nature of work occurs. And that's where I would like to spend a little bit of time, in addition to globalization and demographic shifts, is technology. And this technology and the impact of it on work has been particularly accelerated because of the going-ons of the last year of COVID-19. And there are four big shifts going on in the nature of work that you all should be aware of. And I believe these are pretty much unstoppable. Obviously, these will differ based on the nation, the culture, the type of company you work for, and what you do. But the first one is what I call the unbundling of the workplace. That in most cases, we are not going to go back to 100% in the office. This is particularly true if you are a white collar worker or a knowledge worker. Obviously, if you're a dentist, you have to go back to the to the dentist chair, but or if you're in manufacturing, you have to go back to the factory. But for a lot of people, we're not necessarily going to go back all the way to work. And in that particular case, what's going to happen is we're going to basically spend some of our time at home, some of our time at work, some of our time at places like WeWork or other places near our offices, and then others at experiences that our company put together, training programs, places and events where we can basically learn from each other and build relationships. So there's this unbundled workplace. When this unbundled workplace, as it becomes more prevalent, guess what happens? What happens is it doesn't matter where you live as much as it used to do before. And therefore, what companies are now starting to do is they're starting to put together talent from different geographies. And as a result, your opportunity to have a career is much broader than the city or town you live in. On the other hand, the people competing for your job are much bigger than the town you live in, because your company can hire from anywhere. On the other hand, you can be hired anywhere. So this is a major, major shift. And I myself, for instance, because of COVID-19 and because I'm now not traveling and I'm in Chicago, have clients all over the world who I don't have to fly to because I just Zoom or Google Meet or whatever with them. And as a result, my opportunity set is much bigger than it ever used to be. And it is for everybody who is talented, like all of you all. The opportunity set is, don't think of your job necessarily just the company that you are currently working on. The second is this: most companies are trying to manage their variable costs. They have begun to understand that successful companies manage variable cost. And what's the biggest cost most companies have is labor. So people are trying to say, how can I hire somebody and have them work with me, but not pay them full-time wages because I only need them for 30 or 40% of the time? And as a result, you must also think of your job now as multiple jobs and not one job. That you may actually have 3 different jobs, and the combination of the 3 jobs may even pay more than one job. And a particular job may provide you with benefits, another may provide you with something else. But this reaggregated job is extremely, extremely important. And more people are doing this because I believe we're moving into a world where we're all gig workers, but we don't know it yet. And by gig worker, I don't necessarily mean that we're going to be Uber drivers or, Zomato delivery people. But I also believe that we are going to be like consulting companies. So people who work at McKinsey and Bain and BCG, yes, they get benefits. They're working in a particular company, but they're moving from assignment to assignment. When you're in Bollywood or in Hollywood, when you work on a television show or a movie, you basically come together for that movie and then you move on. So think much more fluid and think much more about yourself being a gig worker, better paid with benefits, but you basically have to think about yourself as a gig worker. And this is why building and scaling your personal brand becomes very important, because you are going to basically need to be well known for certain skills, because people are going to basically look for certain skill sets. You are going to be well known for your reputation, that you're a person of integrity. You are going to have to be well known for your collaboration skills, that you can work with other people. Those 3 key things: what are your competent skills, which is what are you good at? Your reputation is your second component. And your third component really is, are you collaborative and are you going to work well together? This is very important in a connected network world where you're going to work across the world on different projects. Can you collaborate? Do you have a good reputation? Are you competent? And are you going to be particularly good? Building those skills, telegraphing those skills, and exhibiting and scaling those skills is the future of work. Make no mistake about it. And even if you work in the very same company for the rest of your life, and I spent 38 years in the same company, it was building those skills that allowed me to succeed. And it is those same skills that now allow me to succeed as a company of one. So first, begin to think about yourself as a company of one. Even if you're working in a company of 80,000, you are a company of one. And therefore, you want to ask yourself, what are your skills? And how do you brand yourself? I have a very simple exercise, which I'm going to share with you, on how you build your personal brand. And the exercise is the following. Come up with 9 words, simply 9 words. 3 words that describe your niche, which is 3 words that describe what are you very good at? What are you world class at? What would you like to be known for? In my particular case, those 3 words are future, innovation, and change. That's what I focus on. Then come up with 3 words, and you have to ask your friends and other people 3 words for your voice, because what you're good at is very important, which is those 3 words of competency. But what are the 3 words about who you are? Because people follow people, they don't follow titles. And in my case, what I've been told, and they're somewhat show-offy, but that's what I've been told, the 3 words are authentic, provocative, and inspirational. I do what I say. I challenge the status quo, which is provocative, and apparently I inspire people. We'll see that. So authentic, provocative, inspirational. The 3 words that describe your voice. And then 3 words that describe your story, which is why should I believe you? In my case, I'm a mongrel. I grew up in one country, worked for another, working for a company that's headquartered in a third continent. I've done lots of different things from media to creative to strategy to staff to operation jobs. So I'm a mongrel. I'm global for previous reasons, and I'm constantly reinventing. It looks like every 3-4 years, even when I worked in the same company for 34, I was doing new things, so reinventing. So those are the 9 words. Those 9 words become very important because it allows you to frame yourself. It allows you, it's like your periodic table, it allows you to sell yourself. But also those 9 words allow you to filter opportunities, decide what gigs to take, decide what assignments to take. This 9 word exercise is something that I've suggested to people for the last 2 decades. Anybody who's either trying to build their brand, anyone who is in career transition, 9 word exercise. 3 words that describe your niche, 3 words that describe your voice, 3 words that describe your story. Very, very important as you basically move forward to build your brand. That's number one. The second thing that's extremely important is your ability to keep your skills current. If you do not keep your skills current, you are going to get into trouble. Why? Because the half-life of skills are decaying very, very fast because of advances in technology, because of global competition, because of a whole bunch of stuff. 2 or 3 things are happening. Very quantitative jobs are being replaced by machines. That's number one. Number two is new skill sets are needed because of new technologies. Today, what is it to be an influencer on an Instagram or on TikTok? Instagram and TikTok didn't actually exist 10, 12 years ago. So, to a great extent, you need to basically make sure that you continue to be building your skills. And there are only 3 ways of building skills. The first is you need to spend an hour a day building skills, learning. If you aren't learning, the day you stop learning, your career has begun to die and you don't know it yet. So you have to spend time learning and take 1 hour a day to learn. The second is to build a case for the exact opposite of what you believe. The way to exercise your mind is to build a case for the recommendation that's opposite of what you believe. There are 2 reasons for that. One is it'll make you a better salesperson, a better strategist. You'll also empathize and understand the other point of view. But as importantly, we need now to do it because we're living in an age where either because of Google search, Facebook feeds, the television shows we watch, the friends we might hang out with, we are surrounded by people who tend to agree with us or who make us feel good. As a result, many of us sometimes end up believing that our flatulence, which is our farts, smell like Chanel 5. It does not. And so unless you can see from the other point of view, you will soon start getting rusty, dusty, and incompetent. And the third and very important one is to actually exercise and do some of the new things you learn. For instance, I heard about ScrollStack about 8-9 weeks ago. And I said, hey, I should now also post on ScrollStack. I was till then using Substack, which I still use, but I said ScrollStack's also very, very interesting, and it has a particular stuff, a lot of it in Asia, a lot of it in India. I need to learn how to do that. I learned how to do Substack. I learned how to do ScrollStack. You can follow me on ScrollStack at rishad.scrollstack.com or on Substack at rishad.substack.com. What that did is it taught me about how to build a brand and share my thinking. And so that's the third part of it, is how do you use modern technology to scale yourself? So in one end, you clearly have to build a brand with the 9-word exercise. The second is you need to keep your skills, updated, because you need to learn, you need to build a case for the exact opposite, and you need to do. That's the second. But the third is you need to be discovered, you need to be available, you need to basically express yourself. And in the ideal world, in order to do that, you often will use both digital and analog technologies. And I would explain to you how I've done it, and this is one person has done it, but I believe you can use almost any of these or whichever makes sense, as well as new things that you develop to build yourself into a very powerful brand. besides the 9-word exercise and the 3 things I told you to do. So the first thing you want to basically do is you want to have a positioning statement, and you want to have a benefit statement for yourself. So use those 9-word exercise to a certain extent, use those other things. But in my case, my positioning statement is cognition as a service. So I help people think. So cognition as a service. All right, that's interesting, but they'll say, who the hell cares? What's the benefit? So the benefit I propose that I give people is I help them see, think, and feel differently about how to grow themselves, their teams, and their business. So I'm helping people grow their teams, themselves, or their business by helping people see, think, and feel differently. So you need for your own career a cognition, a benefit statement, and a positioning statement. Positioning statement is what you stand for. Benefit is why should anybody care? And then you need a go-to-market plan. And your go-to-market plan should basically have 3 components in it. There should be a one-to-many component, a one-to-some component, and a one-to-one component. And I'll explain to you why you need all those 3 in the modern world. A one-to-many component is this is how you get reach and how you are discovered and people understand who you are. Because you don't know where the future opportunities are. So you basically have to put yourself out there. And one-to-many basically is primarily utilizing 2 things. Utilizing social media, that's number 1. And number 2 is basically utilizing publishing platforms. Obviously, social media is a publishing platform, but other publishing platforms like a ScrollStack, like a WordPress, like a Substack, like a blog, like your own website. The reason it's all these things are very important is your resume to the outside world is not what is a piece of paper or what's on your hard drive or even your LinkedIn page. Your resume is the first page that appears when people search in the major search engine in your country, which in most cases outside of China tends to basically be Google. So if you put in your name on Google, what comes on the first page is basically your resume. If you are active on social media and you basically are either blogging, substacking, scroll stacking, or having a website, you actually begin to control that presence. So if you basically type in my name on Google, you'll basically see what happens in the first page. Or if you click on news, or you click on video, or you click on anything else. That's very, very important because that's how people first understand who you are. So make sure that you are in this one-to-many model, being active in social, having your own website, even if it's only a page or 2, blogging, or being on ScrollStack, or being on Substack, or doing something of the sort. That is number 1. Then you have a one-to-some model. Your one-to-some model is take the opportunity when anybody asks you to speak at an event, or if you can speak to teams, or you can go anywhere, speaking or teaching or helping in a class, that's a one-to-some model. That's extremely important because there people get to know you, you can network, and you can build things, but you can do so by giving versus taking. People appreciate when you give. People don't appreciate when you take. Because when you give, you're building goodwill and you're building your brand. So think about how you can educate, how you can help a school, how you can speak at an event, how you can participate in some sort of different places. So that's what I call the one-to-some model. So one-to-many is blogging, social media. One-to-some is teaching, helping, speaking. And then you need to have a one-to-one model. Your one-to-one model, interestingly, is where you are most likely to make money. These other places, you're less likely to make money, but you're more likely to build your brand. In your one-to-one is where you're most likely to make money. And that is basically by advising people. So you have advisory, by having 3 or 4 different jobs, or having one job, but doing different things at the job. There, you're basically working one-to-one with either individuals or with a particular company, and that becomes a monetization platform. In today's world, don't only focus on one-to-one because jobs are insecure. Your job may be fragmented into 4, and you need to have the others, the one-to-some and the one-to-many model. So in sum, I would like to sort of end and open it up for questions um, with these three very simple sort of summaries. Number one, think about strategy as future competitive advantage. Think about the fact that in the future, your job is going to be a gig job, even if you're working full time for a particular company. It's going to be very, very important as companies start mixing and matching elements and teams all around the world that you basically be known for something. So, as a result of that, you need to build a personal brand. Building a personal brand requires you to do a 9-word exercise. Remaining competent requires you to spend an hour a day learning new things, doing new things, and building the case for the exact opposite. But then you also need to basically be discovered and have your own marketing program. And for that, you need a mission statement, a benefit statement, and a go to market model of one to many, one to some, one to one. The one to many can be blogging and social media, one to some speaking and teaching, and one to one helping people working on jobs, working on gigs. You combine all of that, and you will be permanently relevant, permanently having fun, permanently growing. And I wish you great success and open it up for questions. Thank you very much. Do we have any questions?
Yeah. Okay. And now you can hear me.
Yes.
All right. No, thanks for the very masterfully structured discussion about building your personal brand. And while we're waiting other questions, my first question that occurred to me while you were speaking was this notion of the company of one. So one of the reasons, we started building ScrollStack was this basic observation that there is this paradox that there are a lot of people, individuals as well as small companies who have significant followership on social media, and yet there is no way for them to monetize that audience or reach or reputation or trust that they have built. And you talked about the company of one. So one thing that would be useful. So besides thinking of the brand, what are some of the practical things that you would sort of advise people who are just starting on this journey in terms
Uh,
of tools or other things that you would do
sure.
like day one?
So day one, I would basically day one is it'll be a very long day if you do all of this on day one. But let's say the first 30 to 60 or 90 days, uh, I would have everyone basically say, number one, create your own website, even if it's a couple of pages or 3 or 4 pages, and you can use there are lots of different platforms, Squarespace, a whole bunch of other things. That's number one. Number two is try to get onto at least a couple of publishing platforms. I would definitely suggest ScrollStack. I use that. So, and we are in a ScrollStack. So I would use that. And then I would use in your own market what may be something that's big and scalable. So because I happen to be in the United States, I use Substack. And in fact, that's how you sort of discovered me, right? Which is sort of Substack. Um, and in that particular case, there are two things that allow you to do it. It allows you to build your brand by putting content out there, and you can like I provide content every week, and my content is to help people grow. And you can decide to charge. Now, I do not charge directly; I charge indirectly. So, uh, most of these platforms they charge. You have to pay them a percentage of what you charge, but they help you monetize it through billing, content management, email systems, everything of the same. So the ones that I use besides ScrollStack and Substack, I use WordPress, and the reason I use WordPress is because I can't post Substack, for instance, on Facebook because they're coming up with a competitor. So I transfer the stuff to WordPress and I put it on. So that's one thing. The other reason I use WordPress, even though I write primarily on ScrollStack and Substack, is because now WordPress happens to have the ability to take my stuff and transfer it automatically into podcasts. So what I write basically becomes podcasts on Spotify and other platforms. So interestingly, I might write in one place. So I write in one place and then I distribute across many places, in many forms. That is a second way of doing it besides your website. Now you might say, what should I write about? You should write about anything that you believe you can add value on. It doesn't necessarily even have to be about work. It could be about fishing. It could be about Zen Buddhism. It could be about whatever you believe. But it allows people to come and see that. So that's the second thing besides your website. I would basically use some of these platforms to publish, to share thoughts. That's sort of the second. The third, and in some of these you can monetize, right? Now, the way I monetize, so that you know, is I don't monetize like on ScrollStack or Substack. I monetize as a very different thing. I build my brand on them. So people come to know me. People come to know how I think. They probably don't laugh that much. They say, okay, he's not as stupid as he looks. So that's, potentially good. But what I basically do is people read this and they go buy my book. So every time I publish, I sell books, right? So if you're in India, you go to Amazon, type in my name, Rishad, my book is less than 300 rupees, right? You go to the US, it's about $11. And so people say, wait, I like this writing, I can get more, I can buy my book. But as importantly, they hire me for speaking assignments, right? Or someone will say, I like your thinking, come and speak to my board, and I might get an advisory assignment. So these basically are building a brand, building reach. So I would do that besides your blogging and writing. The third thing that I would basically do, which is extremely important, is be very active on as many social media platforms as you can. And in those, add value. So don't necessarily sit there. I mean, you can share jokes, share variable things, share good articles, add value. Don't get into like fighting matches and all kinds of like nonsense, because the reality of it is what for you seems to be a passion, for somebody else, they'll think you're mentally deranged. Okay. And till you become famous and you can afford to be mentally deranged, you don't want to basically appear as mentally deranged. So I would do those. And by the way, almost all of these are free, because I'm also very, very conversant of the fact that people who are trying some of this may either not have a job or may want to be doing something on the side. So most of these, what's not free is your own labor and your time, which obviously is expensive. Yeah. But otherwise it's free. So those are some of the things that I would basically do.
Thanks. Again, everybody who is watching this, you can post your questions just under the social media platform that you're using, whether on Facebook or Twitter, and we will post those questions to Rishad. So while I await these questions, another one for you. What are some of the examples besides you that you track and you think are doing a good job of doing some of the things that you mentioned? Like, are there examples you would point us to?
Yes. So the two people that you should see who probably are doing this, at least, I mean, there are a lot of people who do this extremely well. But I'm going to give you 3 people who do this amazingly well, that we can do stuff. And then obviously some people who are beyond our reach. So people who are beyond our reach, right, at least, is Kylie Jenner, who's one of the Kardashian sisters. Okay. So Kylie Jenner, what she did is she basically built her fame through a combination, obviously, of TV, but really her Instagram account, which has 140 million followers. She used then her own sense of taste and style to start a company called Kylie Cosmetics. And here's what she did. This is a really interesting thing, is, she was competing with L'Oreal and Coty, who have thousands of people, manufacturing, advertising budgets, everything. She basically just used a company called Pure Beauty to manufacture. She used Shopify to provide e-commerce, right? And she used an Instagram account to provide advertising. And in 18 months, she sold $900 million worth of lip products. She then sold 50% of that company for over $1 billion to Coty. Right? This is the power of, if you have ideas, you leverage, but this is obviously beyond our reach, though of course some people in this crowd might be Kylie Jenner, but So I'll go a little lower, but again, these are people that I look up to, and they're very, very competent and professional. There are three folks. One is a gentleman by the name of Seth Godin. One is a gentleman by the name of Scott Galloway, and one is a gentleman by the name of Shane Parrish. Okay, so Shane Parrish is a ex-Canadian spy. He works in Canada. He used to work for the spy agency, and he's created a podcast called the Knowledge Project. And then he basically happens to have a sort of a website which shares knowledge and information, which he's monetized and built into a speaking and writing business. The other gentleman is Scott Galloway. Scott Galloway has two different podcasts, one with Kara Swisher called Pivot, which is really good. One is the Professor G Show, which is his own. He happens to have a blog that he writes, or a newsletter, which has about 250,000 subscribers. And as a result of it, he now is on TV and a whole bunch of other places. So Scott Galloway, his blog is called No Mercy, No Malice, Pivot, and Professor G Show. The last one, who is a legend, is a gentleman by the name of Seth Godin. And Seth Godin has written many books. He now provides training programs, and he writes a very short blog every single morning. So you can sign up for his newsletter, and every single morning he gives you sort of a point or something in there. And here are three very successful individuals who work at it. And if there is a lesson and learning, is not only are these people very good, very competent, have different voices, but they are disciplined, right? And this is very important, which is nobody actually cares that you're trying to get famous, because nobody actually cares about your fame. They care whether you're giving back, helping them, and providing benefits. So keep that always in mind.
All right. So we have a question. I'm going to read it out to you. A couple of questions. So I'll start with one. There's a question around: how important is it to have and design your own logo and your own identity to stand out? Like, would it be on your list of things to do in the first 60 days?
I would not have that in my list of things to do in first 60 days, because that is cosmetics, right? What I would basically do is make sure that I had the substance, then I can basically add the style. So I'll give you sort of an idea. I basically produce all my own materials, and I can tell you I'm not a design aficionado, right? Excepting for one thing. So there's only one thing that I don't produce myself, which is I did myself for about a year. So I had my own website on Squarespace that I ran, till my daughters basically said, more and more people are coming at this, and they're beginning to understand that you're a terrible designer. So you better like cough up some money and get someone to do something. So I had someone in my old company at Publicis Groupe who I hired as a freelancer to do RishadTobaccowala.com, which looks stunning. So people look at it and say, okay, this guy might actually be good. So yeah. But that wasn't necessarily creating logos or anything else. It was just like have a competent, well-designed website. You can start your own, but at some particular stage, if you have questionable skills like me, you might actually get someone to help you.
Got it. Another question, which is that how do you I think you kind of answered this question. You are undertaking a bunch of things, like you do WordPress, you do Substack, ScrollStack, podcast. So the question is it good to create multiple formats and collage them all on a platform like ScrollStack? It's one of the ScrollStack creators, and the reason I think they're asking is ScrollStack allows you to do audio, and you can like put native audio on podcasts on ScrollStack itself, and like a newsletter.
Yes, So I basically believe you should probably focus on 2 or 3 platforms. Clearly, ScrollStack is one of them. And the reason I don't put everything on one platform is very simply not because I don't believe in any one particular platform. It's basically because I have global audiences with different behaviors and usages, right? So if I want to speak to people in Asia and India, ScrollStack is very, very useful for me. It's less useful for me in some other markets at the current time. Till you'll become a global dominating company and you buy everybody, then it'll be different, right? So that's the reason you basically do it. And at some particular stage, but remember what I don't do, and please recognize this, I produce once and I publish many
Yeah.
places,
Yeah.
right? I don't basically go do different things, every different thing, because that's not
Yeah.
what you want to do. But many of these platforms allow you to publish in different places. And eventually what you want to basically do is you want to build the broadest brand as possible you can. But at some stage, some people will give you the best feedback and the best growth, and that's where you focus.
Um, Another question, which is relates to your, I think the observation you made about not getting into arguments on social media to, you know,
Yeah.
but there's another side to it, right? Which is how do you quench the thirst on social media, on the internet in general, to be constantly be sensational, like be really pushing the boundaries of conversation. Like, what is the fine line? And of course, in your case, because it happens to be something where I guess there is less politicization or polarization. Like, how do you balance if you're for the
Yeah.
broader set of
So
creators?
so the way you do it is the following. The first thing that you basically do is try to make sure that you are providing one of the following four P's to anything that you do. What people are not really looking for is sensation. Here's what they're looking for, right? They're looking for a perspective. They're looking for something that makes them see, think, and feel differently. So, I often say that we're in the third connected age of technology. And I say the first connected age is we connected to discover and we connected to transact. It was called e-commerce and search, Google and Amazon. And 2007, we entered the second age where we were connected all the time, connected to everybody. We call that social and mobile, Apple and Facebook. Now we're entering the third connected age where we are connecting much faster because of 5G, connecting in new ways because of voice. We're connecting to the cloud in the sky, which is cloud-based computing. And we're basically, data is connecting to data, which is AI. And so I basically describe things in human terms and where things are going, and they build on each other. And people say, that's unusual. So a sensation might just be look at something differently, not saying something profane. That's number one. The second is provide, so that's perspectives. The second is have a point of view. My point of view is there's never going to be a new normal. We're going to be living in a new strange, right? That we're never going to go back. So that's a point of view. People say, oh, what does that mean? Again, I haven't insulted anybody, but it's a point of view. A third is a provocation. So a provocation is basically saying, hey, I disagree with you. So what a provocation to me is everybody's going to be a gig worker. People say, the guy's insane. What's he talking about? Right? I say, here's why everybody's going to be a gig worker. That's a provocation. And finally, the fourth is a plan of action. Help me do something. Give me something of help. So I said, okay, here's a 9-word exercise. Here's how you can build your brand. So think about that, right? And those are what people want. They want the sense. They don't want necessarily a sensation of being enraged. They want a sensation of something that helps them grow, something that helps them think differently. And if the only thing you can do is slap them on the face, obviously it'll make them think differently, but they won't think very well of you.
Makes sense. Another question from one of the viewers is, how do you given that you've worked in various geographies, how do you see the differences between, say, Asia and India versus the rest of the world, at least in the way you interact with your fans and audiences?
So the difference is as follows. For instance, after the United States, my biggest group of people, thankfully, is where I grew up, which is India, right? So when I look at everything, and then after that it's the United Kingdom, and then it's France. Okay, those are the four big countries, which kind of explains because 3 of them are English speaking, and I write in English, which is the US, UK, and India. And I was born in India, and I worked for a French company, and so there's a bunch of France. Okay, so that makes it is that. So if I look at the difference between Asia and the United States, there are 3 beautiful things about Asia, which I wish everybody had. So the first is the folks in Asia are much more open to learning. And I don't know whether they're young or whether for some reason they believe because I'm Asian, I'm like some sort of guru. And in the United States, they think like I'm a fool. Who knows? Okay, they don't think I'm a fool. But there's a much more openness for learning. That's number one. The second is there's a much more belief in teamwork. I've always basically believed that the difference tends to basically be that not that in India we are not individual, but in the Western world, the basic unit of decision making is individual. The basic decision unit, as far as I'm concerned, in India, again, this is exaggerating and generalizing, is the family. Okay. And that just feels more interesting for me to a certain extent. What I like about the United States and the Western world versus, let's say, India, right, is the ability to basically try new things and not be afraid to fail. Uh, there's less of that in Asia, because in Asia, your roots, your legacy, your name, your reputation is very, very important. And I'm not saying reputation and name isn't important. You shouldn't be lying, stealing, robbing. But by trying new things and making mistakes, it's a little bit more sullied today in Asian countries than it is in the Western world.
Another question, as you look at, like, we are at the very early days of people calling it the creator economy or passion economy, which is, directly connecting creators to their fans or followers. What are some of the things where you think Asia can do well? Because what is unknown yet is what are the kind of, like, the analogy we at ScrollStack believe is that it's almost like the internet funded for the first decades on the basis of ads, and now you have new ways of doing it, either indirectly,
Yeah.
the way you're doing it. So
Yeah. So
what are some of the
So here are some of the underlying ways, and also as some of the people are asking, like, how the hell do you make money? So that's which was sort of the other thing. So here's what you want to basically do: is do not confuse a social media platform and a social media following as the same thing as monetization. Okay, that's what a lot of mistakes make. What I tell people is, outside of you being a Kylie Jenner or someone else, right? Large number of fans does not necessarily make for a large bank account. Okay, isn't necessarily, if you try to monetize the fans directly. There are ways to monetize the fans directly, and those basically are, you're actually selling them something besides yourself. So what tends to basically happen is, if you look at the people who are successfully monetizing on TikTok or YouTube, right? What they tend to do is they don't sell themselves as much as they sell merchandise, right? So they sell merchandise. They basically say, they either have an affiliate marketing program and they say, go buy this cosmetic, and they get 10% or 20%. Or they basically say, here's a t-shirt, or here's something else. So what the thing you want to basically make is, you can create a fan base here or a reputation here, but you don't necessarily monetize here. You can monetize in different places. That's what people don't realize. So what happens is, I'm very active in the digital world. The total revenue I get from everything I do in the digital world is probably less than 1% of my total revenue. Okay. But of the other 99%, about half of it is because of stuff I've done in the digital world. And that's the thing that's very, very important. What we do not believe, just because you've got lots of people, you got a lot of money. You got a lot of people, now they're listening to you. Now, how do you add value and sell them things, whether it's your services, your merchandise, or something like that, right? But that's the key thing. And one of the things a lot of people have basically realized is, we're moving from a model where advertising is going to be less and less important, because increasingly it's subscriptions, right? But also be aware of the fact, like, for instance, I don't charge for my Substack. And the reason I don't charge for my Substack is there are two reasons. The first is, I think a lot of people will say, look, you're good, but I'm not going to pay $5 a month. You're not that good. Okay, forget about it. Okay, but that's one problem. But let's say I get people to pay for it. And right now, I've only been doing my Substack for about 6 months. So I have about 15,000 readers, which is not bad, right, for 6 months later. But let's suppose I decided to put a $5 a charge. That 15,000 would probably end up being 2,000, like that. Okay, because the other 13,000 will say the guy's insane, I'm not paying. Maybe I get 2,000. So I get 2,000 at $5 a month. This is $60. So if I'm lucky, I get $100,000, right? If I keep them all at $100,000. What basically happens is, I'm now speaking to 15,000 people, and if some of them invite me for a speaking assignment at $3,000 or $4,000 or $5,000, right? I need 20 of those, and I make $100,000. That's the way to basically sort of think about it, right? Which is very, very different. Now, I'm not selling merchandise, I'm not doing affiliate marketing, but there's a lot of other things you can do. But the other one is that recognize this. The moment you look desperate that you're monetizing, people don't think you're cool. Okay. So one of the biggest things is I give away a lot of stuff. So people say, why do you give away stuff? Right. I speak, I help people like every week, whether it's on ScrollStack or Substack. If you actually read my stuff, it actually is very useful. Lots of people, I've got like, for instance, I don't know this in ScrollStack is still young, but on Substack, which is again the same content, I have 75 CEOs of Fortune 500 and FTSE 100 companies who read me every week. They are CEOs, right? 5,000 C-level executives. They don't need to. Why should they? Unless they find it useful. It's free, right? But if I was sitting out there and advertising myself, they would say like, I don't want to talk about this guy. But I'm helping them. And because I'm helping them with perspectives and points of view, right? They actually say, this guy is cool. So think about that. The way you build, there are two ways. A, you can monetize in different places. The other one is this, you can monetize later, right? You want to build your reputation. You want to build your goodwill, right? You just don't want to like make money immediately. Think about it like compound interest and saving for the future.
Yep. I think that that makes a lot of sense. I think it applies to a lot of the creators who now joining this, directly trying to convert their followers on social media into some kind of supporters. And I think it's sort of wise word to say that be patient. It cannot go directly from everything was free to everything is paid.
And remember this is the single biggest thing I have learned in all my years. Like people say like, how come you're doing well? I said, I've learned something like this. Nobody really wants to help you. They want to help themselves, right? If you help themselves and you make them feel good about growing themselves and you help themselves, they'll think you're cool. But if you say, I'm cool, sign up for me, they'll think you're a fool, right? And that's the mistake we basically make. It's, of course we want to grow. Of course we want to become famous. Of course we want to make money. But if that is your primary focus, you'll never actually be famous, make money, or help anybody, right? It's by helping other people, by growing other people, they give you a little bit of their rent to you. But most important, they give you a word of mouth, they tell other people.
Yep. All right. I think we are almost at our end of our session. Is there something else that we should have discussed and we should have asked? But
so no, I just like anything, I will end by basically telling folks who you can go to my ScrollStack at rishad.scrollstack.com and you can read the last 10 things I've written. You can also go to rishad.substack.com and see some of the older stuff as well as the most recent stuff and sign up there. And as importantly, if you are anywhere in the world, I truly believe I can make you 5% more productive if you have 300 rupees in India. Go to Amazon and type in Rishad and buy my book. If you're at the rest of the world, it costs you $10. I guarantee you that you will become 5% more productive when you finish my book. So that's my sales pitch. But you will be more productive. I'll just get $1 or 10 rupees. Won't make me famous. It'll hopefully help you.
Thank you so much, Rishad. And hopefully we'll see more of you on ScrollStack.
Absolutely. As you know, I publish there every Sunday. So
yes,
that's fantastic.
All right. Thanks.
Thank you.